So you ready?
I'm ready. Wait, hold on. Shit. All right, there we go.
Okay, so we are back despite, the radio waves conspiring against us, because radio waves are inherently xenophobic, and I happen to be part Ukrainian and part Iraqi.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah,
That's
and the
serious
radio waves
business.
need that. So I'm back with Benjamin Boyce. We were starting this interview about Evergreen State College, and he's been generous with his time today, telling us about kind of a corner of the country that I'm fascinated by. I'm not sure why it's not as big of a story, but where we left off, I was saying that we're living in a time when arts are being kind of shoved into a little shoebox of acceptable topics and ideas. And I was trying to ask you, as somebody who tries to break out of different I'd say
Hmm.
frames that they put around you. How are you dealing with that? Maybe I rephrased that. So
Well,
uh,
that's an interesting question. Um, in a way, I find the most joy and pleasure in creation through the process of discovery, through the process of alchemy, of mixing and matching different elements and seeing what comes from them. And if I already have a predetermined set, like we were talking about radio waves, like if there's already a compressor that forces all output into like this very limited range, then there's going to be, where's the joy and the pleasure in that?
mhm.
And and so when you prescribe certain parameters to the act of human communication and the act of human expression, then you automatically limit what a human being is. And that begs the question, do you know what a human being is well enough to say that you can actually accurately encapsulate what a human being is, whether in their behavior, whether in their speech, um, in their propriety, in their morality? Um, that's a great question. If we look at the Middle Ages with Western culture, there was Christianity, and the way that an artist worked within Christianity was that you made money through your patrons, or you made money through the church, or not money, but sustenance. And so you
Mhm.
created art that served the purpose of the church, of the Christian church. And so there was a certain set of themes and a certain set of pictures and a certain set of topics that you could work within. And actually, within the creative endeavor, if you do have a predetermined set of rules or topics, then you don't have to worry about invention in on the level of the narrative. You can work within invention with medium. You can focus your talents on pushing the medium of the art forward. And I wonder how, within the social justice framework or within the leftist framework, if all of the innovation has to occur within that social framework, within, talking about diversity or talking about these different topics that are really hot topics right now, sexism and racism and so on and so forth, then that unburdens you with the questions of what is race, what is gender, what is all these different things, and you can just focus on dressing yourself up or playing around within the parameters of that. So there is a benefit for an artist to take on themselves certain rules and certain moralities. But the thing is that I think that a human being should be able to develop not only their style but their substance. And
Well, yeah,
so,
I'll tell you what, the way I see it is, and usually I use the metaphors of music, popular music. If
yeah.
if you look through all the trends of the past, of the rock and roll era, let's call it, every single, um, you know, and every single genre that comes to this apex. You know, there was hair metal, for example. For a long time, people probably thought hair metal is you know, this is the, and you know, there's some great hair metal artists. And then there was the grunge revolution, which we touched on briefly in the last segment. But automatically, the vast majority of these hair metal bands were like the dinosaurs. They instantly, it was their meteor.
Hmm.
And the same thing happened with
Hmm.
with Motown. It got replaced by more of a disco sound,
Hmm.
and other more electronic forms of R&B. And unfortunately for these SJWs, I think that they have this notion, and you lived with them much more closely than I did. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they have this notion that they are creating the final stage of human society that is to never be broken from, because otherwise that would become unjust. So what's your take on that?
My take.
Here, disagreement here.
No,
Yeah,
I'm gonna, yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you. I think that they aren't
yeah.
thinking in a creative manner. I think that my experience of the very few that I've met and watched and been studying is that it's an entropic, or they're concerned not with creating something, but with dismantling. The stress is always on tearing down the power structure, tearing down the oppressive structures and the systems of oppression and this and all that stuff. So I don't think that they see themselves as building something yet. I hope that they get to the point where they're like, okay, we need to produce something positive. And I think that very quickly, the feedback that they're going to receive is that they cannot progress any further until they actually start giving solutions to that. And unfortunately, Evergreen isn't there yet. I just went to a rally that they had last week, and it was an inclusion rally. It was a time to get connected with the community, but the way that they framed it was that the Evergreen Uprising, to use their words, was a positive. It was a great outburst of very necessary change. And what we're going to do now is tell this story where we had one bad actor that we're all against. And he epitomizes, Brett Weinstein, epitomizes the evil in these structures. And so this rally of inclusion became this rally of exclusion. He was there. It was borderline religious, going back to the Middle Age. They were continuing with this witch hunt where they had the guy who symbolized. They even called him Trump, which is fascinating. I'm going through the album now.
My take on this is and the Middle Ages is just as good of an analogy as what I'm saying. I was reading about the Cultural Revolution in China. I actually spoke with somebody who's, you know, he had his, you know, he's from China and has, you know, some deep studies on it. And what it reminds me of is Liu Shaoqi, the Russian, or sorry, Russian Chinese president, who was within a day deposed and shamed publicly and mocked, and you know, and as an old person, which in China it used to be taboo until Mao, was disgraced and you know, basically paraded through the streets like in, you know, in like Game of Thrones. As so far as I know, I don't watch the show, so I know there's a scene in there, but this is a public humiliation that is characteristic also of Maoism. It's true what you said too. The witch hunting. I think that there's a lot of totalitarian or authoritarian cultures that they embrace that idea that in order to maintain control, you must have an enemy that you can focus on, and the closer, the better.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought up Professor Weinstein, because I didn't want this to be entirely about him. I wanted to be also about, you know, you personally as a person
Ramon,
who
it's
yes, sir.
it's all about Brett Weinstein.
So let's talk about. Are you being sarcastic there?
I'm making fun of his
Uh,
critics. They say that
okay,
he
Brett
makes it.
Weinstein. Um, what happened with that video? I've seen it before with that Nicholas Christakis at Yale had a similar incident where he was just publicly shamed. There was one in, and then there was the Mizzou case, which wasn't a professor being shamed, but a professor going just batshit crazy in front of a camera in order to get another, you know, in order to harass a student. But you were at the school. you saw this woman who you describe as the Red Queen. Very interesting analogy. What is it, to Alice in Wonderland, right? Um, so how many people would you say of the faculty are closer to the Weinstein state of mind, and how many are closer to the Red Queen state of mind? The I'm gonna go full on for this social justice warrior stuff.
The I it is my feeling, because I don't have proof of this, that there's a dark matter that is bigger than either of those things. There's the majority of the faculty and the staff and the administration of Evergreen is kind of for Weinstein and is kind of for equity, but they just want to do their job. And so you don't see a lot of speaking out. So what you do, you have a very, very strong vocal group that is for Naima Lowe, who champions her and who champions equity. And the president is championing that too. And they control the...
Hey Ben, can you hold on 1 second? I'll be right back. I have somebody knocking at my door.
Okay, good luck.
I apologize. I know who it is, but I'll be right there.
Okay.
And I'm back.
And he's back. Did you get a fun package?
Yeah, I got we do a family Costco thing, so I just got my delivery from my dad.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, he didn't text me. I asked him to text me if he's coming, and then he just shows up and knocks on my door.
Oh, Dad.
But I love my dad. So
you better.
Yeah, or else I don't get any Costco.
Or you don't get any Costco.
Right.
Where's your pretzel sticks?
Yes, sir. Anyway, sorry for these interruptions again. But yeah, you were talking about Naima Lowe and this cadre of people around her. You know, is that like a real working group of people?
They're very tight and they're very strong. I was surprised. This is kind of sensitive, so I'm going to try to tiptoe around this, but I was going through my Facebook feed last night, and I saw a photo posted by a staff who works at Evergreen, who I greatly admire. I deeply admire, and it was a picture of me with Brett Weinstein and a current student, and he called us the frat boys showing up to the connection event, having some sort of narcissistic sub rally or something, and it rather shocked me. But he was sent that photo by another one of the coterie of the equity canoe members, and so I didn't realize it until that moment, until last night, that not only have I been kind of walking dangerous territory, but I'm very much upsetting people at Evergreen. I'm basically persona non grata number 2 behind Brett Weinstein. And it's very interesting if you listen to their rhetoric, even when they don't talk about me directly, they'll talk about this right-wing organization who's making videos, or like these videos that have funky music and it's very poppy and it's very entertaining, and I'm disparaging equity, and well, not I, but this right-wing organization is out to get Evergreen. And in a way, I'm not out to get Evergreen. I benefited immensely from Evergreen, but there is a pernicious ideology that I strongly disagree with, and I was never given the space or the opportunity to speak about that while I was there. I was never given the opportunity to disagree with the fact that I have an issue. I need to be explained why I should tell everybody my gender pronoun. You know, and that's just a hot topic, but just like that, everybody all of a sudden last year had to say their gender pronoun out loud. Like nobody talked about that. We didn't have any discussions. It was just enforced. It was something that a group of students demanded, and so they implemented right away. I'm like, I don't agree with the method of this being implemented, and furthermore, I still don't understand why I should be doing that. But that's just a side channel.
Well, I mean, I think you know, to respond to what you said, and that's an impression that I think I'm hearing more and more around the country. You know, these people that are being lumped in with right wing. You're not right wing. I am. You know, if you're good, that's like,
Well, see,
I have. Well,
even me talking to you makes me right wing.
well, the problem is, you know, I've never cared about being You know, I believe what is my belief system. I don't care about a right or left definition. I believe in a free market system. I believe in freedom of you know, the right to bear arms. Hot topic today. I believe in. I don't really care about a lot of the topics that, you know, the gender studies things. I do believe in you know, that we should have English education as a foundation, even though I do speak other languages. And you know, I'm fine with people who have a you know, a rebuttal point. You know, I've talked to people who are for universal health care, and I think that it's great to have people you know, kind of get at loggerheads over an issue, and you know, develop real you know, real quote unquote conversations. The word conversations become kind of retarded lately, just like the word retarded. And you know, the problem is if you say words like that, they get more bent out of shape than they do about what happened last year, for example, or I think it was this year, with those kids who tortured a mentally handicapped guy in Chicago. They don't care about that. They'll rationalize that. But if you say something, if you say the wrong word, they will get very bent out of shape with it. So what I'm seeing here, unfortunately, you know, I think that they're right to a degree, this SJWs, but they're wrong in how they perceive it. Because yes, there are right-wing people that are taking what Evergreen is doing and using it to their means. But why are they doing it? Because they're providing so much ammunition and so much so much of a smorgasbord of topics that are to be used, and it's not fair for people who are rational on the left. I remember Christopher Hitchens was, you know, you listen to him talk, and this was a guy who could spell out his case for whatever, you know, his atheism viewpoint and his viewpoints on. I think he was a huge proponent of a lot of the um, socialized services of the government, and that was an intelligent person. And you could really look at him as somebody who was a formidable opponent, even for people that disagree with him, like me. Those people are being really overshadowed and even smothered by this culture that I've seen you expose in your videos. Is that how you see it, or is it kind of exaggerated?
Well, see, the thing is, I try to, when I go back in time and I find a video of an Evergreen teacher promulgating a certain ideology, I try to approach it sympathetically, and then I try to critique it. especially by seeing how young people being taught this ideology over and over and over again, and that one ideology not being countered. Like whenever Evergreen has a panel of speakers, they all agree, right? They just all have a different perspective on what they agree on. But you never have debate. You never have somebody who's right. You never have somebody who's centrist at all. It's all left, 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 left. And I think it's very fascinating that like you said, with the how the left is behaving right now, or the vocal left, the dominant left, the authoritarian left, they're forcing out all of the rational actors. And so all those rational actors are ending up speaking to conservative outlets and are ending up having commiseration with the right. And I was thinking this today at my job, where I was thinking that, like, what if Rupert Murdoch, the guy who founded Fox News or pushed Fox News in the direction it went, what if he was playing a long con on lefties? He's like, I'm going to drive public discourse into the gutter to such a degree that the left is going to have to catch up with me. And then we'll see, when we go into the gutter, we'll see who is worse off, the right or the left, when we all end up in the gutter. And I think, this is total conspiracy. This is just speculation. It's not conspiracy. But you see that now that the left has gone into this super authoritarian, bending facts to suit their narrative process or procedure, that people like Brett Weinstein, who are very progressive, very environmental, very like socialist in their demeanor, who think that the way that we're going to survive the oncoming crisis, that's not just us yelling at each other, but like the end of the world stuff, is to refigure out how we're going to operate in a way where we can share our resources very conservatively, through some sort of centralized structure. I don't want to put words in his mouth anyways, but Brett Weinstein's avowedly a progressive, and now he only has he's only allowed to speak to libertarians and to conservatives. He goes on Fox News, and then he's vilified, right? He's vilified by Evergreen, where Brett Weinstein's now a narcissist. Brett Weinstein's now feeding the alt-right more ammunition, when you're like, well, actually, you guys are the ones who are creating the ammunition, and then you're, by not listening to him, by not accepting his criticism, he has to speak that criticism because you're just accusing him of all this awful behavior, being a racist, being a supremacist, and so on, so that he has to go to the more rational of the extremists in a way.
Yeah, and I think if I want to push this into the the choppy waters of last year's election, I see a parallel with Jill Stein, who I never agreed with Jill Stein's viewpoints. I'd say almost none of them. Almost none of them. But I a lot of the way that the Democrats and the establishment left dealt with her was really kind of disgraceful, and to the Sanders case as well. But I made a point of saying, last year during this race, which was just out of this world, people kept using this stupid word, this candidate is not ready. He doesn't have the tenor for office. Usually Donald Trump, but they said the same thing about Gary Johnson. And then the Republicans would respond, she doesn't have the tenor. And I was like, tenor to be in the office? If you look at all four candidates, Jill Stein was the most, she had the most self-control, the best way of expressing herself, the best presentation, the best career accomplishments. So if you're only going by that, by style points, you should vote for her. She's a fantastic. She seems like a fantastic lady, and that's why I'm like so flabbergasted by these people that they have this tunnel vision, and they won't. I mean, I'm sure that some of the people at Evergreen probably did vote for based on her policy points, but
I voted for her because I didn't have any other choice.
Yeah. There's certain people that had. I was going to vote for. I was. Tell you the truth, there were a lot of elections I haven't voted in, so I was willing not to vote in this one too. But I happen to have behind me this Bill and Hillary Clinton Presidential Penitentiary Library, which is 50 books long. And I was like, I'm not, I've studied this woman long enough and her husband that I don't want her to be in office.
Hmm.
But I've never gone, and I've wanted to. I've never gone to a Clinton voter and said, "You're a disgrace to this country, and you should be removed from the voter rolls
Mm-hmm.
because you voted for a candidate." Because you can vote for candidates that are horrible people, and I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
excludes you from making a choice again. How about that? You are a grad of Evergreen State College.
Yep.
What do you see down the line? Does it worry you what your college's reputation will mean down the line, career-wise, or reputation? Are people going to look at that degree as kind of a caricature, or do you think that there's going to be a resolution to this?
The way it's headed right now, that vocal group wants it to be social justice university. They really want it to be social justice university. And they, according to their mindset, so far as I've been able to ascertain in, studying them and critiquing them, they sincerely believe that it is now time for those who are most vulnerable to be put on top, over those who are historically overrepresented in all these different ways. And that sounds like a noble goal, but to just force somebody on top, to force somebody in control and not teach them how to be an administrator, not teach them how to control themselves, not teach them how to inspire people beyond the moment of that great outpouring of revolution. Like what happens when the dust settles? What happens when everything is dismantled? Well, you have to go back to building things. You have to go back to managing things. And I think that they're ultimately doing a huge disservice to the vulnerable populations that they're trying to lift up. They're lifting them up in the moment, and they're making them feel good during that 4 years of being at Evergreen. They're going to get all this safety. They're going to get all these special rooms that will have their race's name on them, and that will have to be statistically more their race than any other race. Actually, I was going through the interview that they had with the new vice president of equity and inclusion. And some student asked this vice president to be of inclusion, what would you do? I have to find the exact quote, but what would you say about white people coming into the multicultural center? Or what would you do to discourage white people from going into the Latin room or the Black cultural center and stuff? That is a question that you can ask says so much about the students, not at Evergreen, but I think the feeling of young people right now, that is a valid question to ask. How can we shut off resources to white people? Because statistically and historically, they've had way more resources than everybody else. And on the surface, I can understand why you'd want that, why you'd see like white people have all this stuff and they probably took it from everybody else. But the opportunity that I think that the teachers should take is to say, well, there's a certain cultural values that these people who happen to be white embedded in themselves, and the same with Asians, and the same with perhaps a lot of Middle Eastern and European people, is that they prize hard work and family, or they prize science, and they prize evidence. Instead of teaching the qualities of behavior that produce wealth, they just say, these people have wealth and they took it from you, so we need to get it back because it's our turn to be wealthy. It's our turn to be represented here. And not teaching people how to be represented, not teaching people how to manage, others, and how to gain power and how to distribute power. It's a huge shame. They just want to,
Yet,
it's that like caricature of Marxism where we're going to take from the haves and give to the have-nots, but the have-nots are not qualified to have, right? There's something about earning wealth that qualifies you for managing wealth. And that's what
yes,
should be taught.
I think like I see a lot of what you're saying, and it's hard to there's certain events that I've seen. I mean, I went to college. I was a Jewish student at a school with a lot of Arab Americans, And I actually had a lot of fun with a lot of these Egyptian and Lebanese students, but there was every once in a while somebody would throw me. I was also,
Hmm.
unbeknownst to them, I was in the Israeli army,
Oh,
but
so are you Israeli, or are you American, Jewish, Iranian?
well, yeah, I was born here. My parents were they immigrated here in the 80s, and then
Okay.
I went back when I was of service age,
Oh, wow.
and then I came back here. My mom's Iraqi. She
Okay.
passed away, the um, but the thing is, I never saw it as a problem because even though my dad was at a war with the Egyptians, and we just
Mm,
came on the anniversary of the war, I always thought the Egyptians are like pretty neat people. They're
hmm.
fun to be with, and they know how to party. The Lebanese
That's a
also a little,
very important
and and
characteristic.
and I don't have they're in the Bible in such a caricatured
Mm,
I mean, I do believe in the Bible, but I've never seen
hmm,
fit to project on individuals what I've known from their history
hmm.
as a country. Because if that it was to be done to me, then it would, it's happened, and
Yeah.
that's and with tragic circumstances, and
Hmm,
such things happen all the time now at these colleges. You see, um, just this like you said, this projection of Marxism. I think it was called critical race theory
yeah.
when it started out, and what they do is they try to explain all the inequities in society as a result of some sort of swindling
Yeah.
or violent
Yeah.
coercion.
Yeah. It's entropic. It's
Right.
zero sum. It's nihilistic. You
And
never
and
create value. You can only ever rob other people of value, which is
yes,
just
and
like
and it,
what?
so in order to set up their own desires to coerce others, they have to lay down the foundation by calling for the coercion of others. So this has happened already in Zimbabwe,
Mm,
in Uganda, in China,
hmm.
and it hasn't been. And I'm not a person for restoring apartheid, but when apartheid ended, the idea was to create a society where the barriers for racial participation
Mm,
were removed.
hmm.
It wasn't in order to create a new barrier for a group that had previously imposed those
Yeah.
barriers.
Yeah.
That's the way. And I remember reading about
Mm,
apartheid ending. It was, not when it happened. I was probably only 8 years old, but only a
hmm.
few years later. And the way that these students are treating it now, they are taking the position of the most radical factions of those struggles that were, they were the other extreme. And I'm not one of those people that says moderation is the key to everything, but
Hmm.
you cannot go and justify coercion, in my opinion, by using other people's coercions on. I just wrote a
Hmm.
piece about that, about the Ukrainian genocide, that despite all the discrimination that my father's family is experienced in Ukraine and persecution, I can't justify the Ukrainian genocide.
Hmm.
It's a horrific event for all history. How do you think events like that, horrible tragedies like what happened in China and in Cambodia, what do these people just ignore them entirely, or is it not even like a topic at all? Like how do they reconcile themselves with that?
This is very uncomfortable to bring up. I found video that was from an event that was held 80 days before the protest, where it was a designed event, and it was for TRIO, or Upward Bound, which is a part of the college is to help minority and disadvantaged low-income students to get into college and then be successful through college. And the person who's head of that department set an event where he invited a bunch of high school seniors to the campus, and then he had a bunch of college students or college graduates talk about their history and their time at college. And every single story was about the historical oppression that occurred to their ancestors, right? So you had one person, one young man, he was Cambodian, and the video is called Evergreen's Devolutionary, if you want to look it up. But there was a young Cambodian man who talked about when he was in 7th grade or 8th grade. He was the police came into his classroom and told him and his other Cambodian friend to come outside, and they were all lined up against the wall and patted down, right? And this happened in America. And then while this young man was talking about that to the students, he's like, well, when I was lined up, I remembered Cambodia. And I remembered my grandfather's experience of being taken out of his bed at night and lined up. And if somebody had glasses, they were shot. And if somebody was a doctor, they were shot, you know. And all this huge massacre occurred. The Khmer Rouge came through and just like decimated, I don't know the number, 1 million, 2 million people, but it was this huge massacre. And so they're taking this massacre that happened in history, and then they superimposed it over a racial, profiling event in America. And in this event, what the leader of Trio did was he took the past, even went back and showed photos of the 1959 Alabama, where there were black people being chased down by dogs, where there were white people holding up signs saying, no blacks, we don't want blacks, or we want segregation. And what this guy did was he designed an entire event where he took these racial tensions of the past, and then he said, this is still with us right now. This is still what people think right now. You think that it's gone, but all this stuff is alive and well right now. And in the video, there are people who are key members of the protests, like listening to this and seeing and being taught that revolution is the answer. Revolution is the answer. We are surrounded by racists, by oppression is in every corner of the world, and what we need to do is have an uprising and overthrow it to build our new, better world. And in that video, I basically make I advance the argument that the world is not perfect. Society's not perfect. White people aren't perfect. America is not perfect. All these things are not perfect. But to say that they're as bad as they used to be is not going to give you the tools to correct what is imperfect right now. We really need to develop a refinement of our attention and a refinement of our skills to really pinpoint the very small instances that are holding people back. And not only in the systems that we're embedded in, but what holds us back inside of ourselves. But to project that there's this big enemy that we need to overthrow, it's horrific. And I think that's a huge, I want to use the word sin. It's a sin that the Evergreen faculty and staff and administration are trying to teach students that the world is against them and they need to overthrow everything that's against them, instead of learning that to see people as people and to see these systems as flawed but perfectible.
Well, I'll tell you what I think that they're creating, and I think it should worry both of us for different reasons, of course. But I have interviewed a couple white nationalists who are, they're not, in and of themselves, they're not awful people at all, but they espouse racial nationalism, which I don't believe in for a variety of reasons.
It's so boring.
Well, what they have been. And I can see it from a cultural standpoint. Yeah. They've been pushed into this corner where, for example, one of them happened to be homeless for a while, and he still gets attacked for being a white racial oppressor and whatever. So he says, I don't have to take this crap anymore. I'm a Irish by descent, and I don't need to be told. And these are people, they didn't want to become white nationalists. I don't think people set out necessarily to pick their political leanings, but because of the atmosphere, and he's from the Seattle area, he said that, and he's really kind of lost his bearings because of it. He's his resentment for this society that, it's starting to characterize him as some sort of malignant tumor. I don't think that he can function anymore. I mean, he's
Hmm.
talking now about losing his job and and being evicted because he's a white nationalist. But it's a chicken and egg argument. Are you being persecuted because you're a white nationalist, or does your white nationalism cause your persecution? I don't know, but
Hmm.
and I've kind of hinted to him, in terms of taking care of yourself, it's a horrible idea. You
Hmm.
live in Seattle. Seattle's not good. It's not the ground zero for
Huh.
the new Reich or whatever. But I think that just like I can look into what's going on with a person, and beyond just the views that he expresses, uh, I would expect that these people at Evergreen could at least try once in a while to entertain the possibility that somebody has a difference of opinion with them. But it seems like they not only do they not want to do that, they're not capable of doing it anymore.
Yeah, I really find that unfortunate. And I've put myself in the position where I am persona non grata number two behind Brett Weinstein because I'm openly criticizing Evergreen. But coming across social media posts that call me names, say that I'm a narcissist or say that I'm a frat boy, um, it shows me that these teachers and these staff and these faculty, they themselves are incapable at this point of receiving criticism of them. And the thing is that what happened at Evergreen was atrocious. Was atrocious. I mean, even the New York Times had to say this is not right. This is not correct. I mean, even the New York Times, they pissed me off with the way that they treated Bernie Sanders. They really pissed me off about that. Um, but but to be unable to receive criticism, it forces you to only look at the world it forces you to see in the world only that which will reinforce your belief. And two, it disallows or it blocks you from being able to grow within your belief. If you are not criticized, then you cannot become more subtle. If you're not wrestled with, and if you don't wrestle with these ideas, then they become this you become a caricature within the idea. You become a carrier for that mimetic pathogen, which is your ideology. And you can only ever replicate that ideology in any given circumstance. And that might work for you, but when you replicate that with a young person, and then they replicate that with another young person, you eventually get somebody who is so incapable of dealing with variance and change and difference that it becomes the opposite of diversity. It becomes judging people based on the color of their skin or the tone of their voice or which kind of butt they like to grab or so on and so forth, right? So it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think that there is another element because remember, it's a school, like we said at the beginning of the last video. Um, in a lot of careers, for example, my job, I have to design things, and if it doesn't fit the
Mm.
requirements of the customer
Mm-hmm.
or of our organization, then I've just this past Thursday I had a visit from somebody who said, "Do you really think this can work? Do you? I want you to really spell it out for me." And I
Mm.
had to. And it took me a few, and and there was some pressure on me there, and that's the approach that I think I'm better at it in politics than I am in engineering, because that's kind of the approach that I take. That
Mm.
when I hear somebody advocate for universal health care, that challenges me to advocate against it for various reasons. And it's a kind of a back and forth. It's like a tennis match. And
Mm.
at the end of the tennis match, people can shake hands or throw
Yeah.
the racket at each other, but it shouldn't be um, this horrible
Mm.
experience that you've been seeing. But these teachers, this is where I was going with the fact that it's a school.
Yeah.
They're there to serve the learning needs of people that come there in order to get an education. They're not there to you know, just spew their own feelings and aspirations for what they are trying to build as you know, personally. They have to,
Hmm.
you know, they have to. It's just like you can't build a house on nothing. You have to build it on earth that's there, even if the
Hmm.
earth isn't fit to be part of the house. That's the way I see it, kind of. And I don't understand how people can go to a job and act like that. And you know, let's. I mean, I know we've been running long, so do you want to finish up in 5, 10 minutes or?
15 or so,
Okay,
whatever it's good.
so let's start to move towards the end. But in your personal interactions with these teachers, did they behave the way that they seem to behave on these videos, or is it kind of just a stage presence that they have sometimes?
Well, okay, it's the Pacific Northwest,
Mhm.
so it's kind of like endemic of this part of America where we very much avoid direct confrontation. But there is a critical mass, like a stage presence, I guess what you're saying, where once people are given the microphone, like there's a certain expectation of what they're going to say. And they can go very far with what they say as long as they hold that microphone. But when you sit down and talk with them, they're always going to be amicable with you. Not with the students, but with the professors. Um, I lost my train of thought. You made me think of something about, and I didn't take a note down here. But with design, I love your idea of like the building a house. Like you have to build it on something that's there, even if what's there is not a part of the house. I think that's beautiful. I was one of the critiques that I've met with that isn't just an attack, but a critique is say, well, you're championing Western culture, you're championing this thing you call rationality, but isn't that just as arbitrary as anything else in the world? Aren't you just going on some sort of belief yourself? Isn't every belief just as valid as any ever given belief? And I think about the engineering. I think about engineering. If you want a car to stop, like you really have to go through and design a system that we call brakes right now that's going to work. So what we need to do is figure out some way to take our fantasies about relativism and apply them into what works. And what works within the humanities is the outcome of behavior, is how people act and how people treat each other and how people speak to one another and how people see each other. That is the proof or the brake system or whatever, like the house of the humanities. So you go into the humanities and you're dealing with art, you're dealing with history, you're dealing with literature, you're dealing with all these very fluctuating, very emotional, all this very emotional behavior. So where is the solid ground? With regards to a work of art, what the proof of a work of art is the impact that it has in the moment of its reception and then how it reverberates in the experience of the person who observed that work of art. With regards to an ideology or sociology or a philosophy of life, such as critical race theory, such as this equity stuff, you judge it based on the fruits, right? This is like you were saying, like you believe in the Bible. I'm gonna point to the New Testament. I don't know if that falls within what you call the Bible, but by their fruits you shall know them. And I really do think that it's an uncomfortable truth. No, it's not a truth for them, but it is a fact that the Evergreen Spring or the protest in the springs, in the spring at Evergreen, was an outcome of a certain mass of students believing in this ideology. And I really do think that this ideology that's being taught is very similar to what happened in communist China. It's that you denigrate your elders and you denigrate the system, and then you're not going to have to build anything. So you just keep on, like if you watch the video of there's these fourth floor meetings where George is in front of this huge group and they start giving him their demands, and then they just start ridiculing him and telling him what to do with his hands and telling him that the parking fees are too high and telling him he's racist and making fun of him and yelling at him because, like, at the end, it's not a constructive philosophy. At the end, it's not creative. It doesn't want to create anything. It just wants to destroy. And I think that the proof is in the behavior of the students. And I don't want to blame the students. I don't think it's necessarily their fault. I really do think that it's the fault of the system, this systemic ideology that they've been given.
Yeah, and that's very. I mean, I'm glad. I don't think that there's a lot of things we'll agree on in terms of if we actually were going to talk about politics today, I think me and Benjamin would probably not have many common points. But if we're talking about this, yeah, I think the comparison to China is that's really exactly what I was going to bring up. And now that he already did, we can move on. But the thing that I'm trying to wrestle with is that character of George. What's his last name?
Bridges.
Bridges. And I saw the video. I think you posted it either this week or last week of the previous president coming for a ceremony and getting hounded because it was the day after the Trump election. Mm-hmm. And this guy, he comes there, didn't really seem like an aggressive type. And they're just, yelling at him. He was the former president of the college. Was he the first black president of the college? Or
maybe, I don't know though.
Well, in any case, this guy seemed like he was the ultimate embodiment of the type of accomplishment that you would want from somebody at I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. That's the type of guy that I think that the college would most want to produce. And they just treated him like some sort of, pariah. And this George Bridges character, can you give me your impression? Do you think he's actually just some incompetent hostage over there, or is he part of? Is he fully committed to their line of thinking?
Okay, I need to make a personal statement that it is part of my belief system that I don't want to judge a human being. I don't have the capacity to judge a human being. I can judge somebody's performance, though. I think, and especially in a leadership capacity, especially within a state institution, it's incumbent on me as a citizen to judge and to kind of make judgments on their performance. And from what I've seen, his performance is that he changes his behavior to suit whatever the room requires of him. He very much allows the feeling and the dominant feeling in the room to control his behavior. And I think that's the opposite of a leader. I think that gives rise to very just with that fourth floor meeting, because he did not provide a cap, because he did not say, we cannot, this is the line, you cannot move past that line. He did that once. He tried to do that. Hey, we're not going to do this anymore. And then they started yelling at him and he backed down. So because he didn't give that threshold or that ceiling, I guess, where's my hands? They just kept on going up and 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 up. And they spiraled out of proportion. And I don't think he's capable of, and actually I have documents that prove that he was willfully negligent with the safety of those who he was in charge of during the days of protest. The police chief gave him a memo on the second day of protest, where the library building and the administration building was basically taken over by students, and entrances and exits were blocked. People were taken hostage. People were blockaded in their rooms. The chief of police, before that happened, on the day of that happened, the morning of that happening, she's like, this is going to happen. We need to be prepared. And he didn't do anything about it. He just let the students do whatever they want. And nobody got hurt, but the campus and the whole Evergreen situation reached a limit that we really, really, really don't want happening across America. Like, it's completely unacceptable. And I think that it was within his power to stop that from happening. And furthermore, I need to make one point on that. So-called 80 students have been sanctioned because of what happened then. If George would have followed the advice of his chief of police, those students would not have been in a position to act and to display behaviors that they were by just the mass of their movement compelled to do. I think that he should be responsible for the students' actions because he could have stopped them from being able to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like you bring me to another. I mean, we're gonna end soon, but what? Let's talk about like an institution that's the opposite of Evergreen. There's only a few to come to. I mean, let's say Duke University in the mainstream would be kind of the more of the elitist traditional college, or I'd say Hillsdale College if you're familiar. I don't think that I'm a conservative person. I don't think that I would be able to really enjoy being there either. I think that
Mm.
you do need kind of an environment where, and I'm not saying that that's a bad college either, and I'm not saying that Evergreen College, there may be many people that benefit still from going there, but we're confronting here an issue of how much structure is necessary
Hmm.
to have a institution that has real integrity
Hmm.
academically
Yeah.
and socially, and we could use 5 different other adjectives for it.
Yeah.
Um, and yet I think that if you did something like really impose discipline in Evergreen, yeah, you would lose a bit of the Evergreen jive. I don't know what to call it.
Hmm.
Or we have a similar college here in Ohio, Oberlin.
Hmm.
Not quite as I think it's a lot older than Evergreen, but it has the same sort of student body.
Hmm.
So where would you begin? Where let's say, how much structure do you need? I mean, you have this unique curriculum, which Dr. Weinstein actually went in depth, talked about on one of your
Yeah.
videos. How do you impose more structure without, just poisoning the well of what you did try to accomplish there, which does have, a, you know, a few decades of real success to it?
Okay, so I think that we can reframe it not as structure, but as skills. Um, so that there's still freedom, but there is a requirement with regards to the skill of the students to perform at a certain caliber. And every student is different, and every student not only is different where they start out, but like the term is neurodiversity right now. Like I'm very neurally diverse. Like I do weird things all the time. I talk to myself in the shower and do stuff like that. And there's a way to inspire structure, to inspire self-regulation by by demanding from the students that they just basic things. They communicate well and that they think deeply and that they see things in multiple different angles so that they are not adverse to challenge. And a belief system, such as displayed in a certain faction at Evergreen, is construed is built in such a way that it causes people to avoid challenges and to cast. There's this huge challenge. There's the alt-right and there's the system of oppression. That's our challenge. But the real challenge is like, well, there's all these different individuals and I need to figure out how to deal with them, and I need to learn how to deal with myself, and like the real challenges instead of these big systemic things obfuscate like real learning, like getting better as a person, getting better as an individual. I wrote a tweet that might be kind of controversial today, where I said that like why not pursue supremacy, not racial supremacy, but personal supremacy? How can I be the absolute supreme communicator, the absolute supreme uh, helper of other people? Like, why not pursue a supremacy that doesn't need somebody lower than me to feel high, but to achieve the best that I possibly can be? Is that not what education is about? And construing everything as us versus them, construing everything as we're going to help the vulnerable, we're going to create safe spaces, that allows for people to avoid the real work of actually maximizing their potential and providing the world with something that has never existed before.
Well, there you have it. We've done, I think, altogether this might even be 2 hours, except for that huge technical uh, nuke that happened, but
Well,
I want.
you can put a advertisement for Fremont beer in there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll shill here for well, all I have here is Hillary Clinton books, but okay. Um, I have here
Hail corporate.
Fender guitar strings.
Awesome.
I haven't played for a long time, but I still have these, and they're still not rusted because
Because you
I
don't
didn't
breathe
open
in
it.
them. Oh, excellent.
Right. But yeah, I want to thank Ben Boyce again, and hopefully one day, and you're welcome back anytime. You have like fantastic material, by the way, and his channel is it's Benjamin Boyce, right?
Benjamin A. Boyce.
Benjamin A. Boyce, and what expose Evergreen is on what, Twitter or on
It's just a hashtag on the internet
okay.
now. You have to do that little dash above the E, but if you do hashtag expose evergreen, you'll probably find it in Twitter.
Okay, so you're welcome back anytime. Stay on the line for afterward,
Okay.
and anybody who wants, please share this video, comment. I
Like,
think Ben is going to
subscribe.
post it. Well, right? Are you
Yeah, I'll
gonna?
do a little advertisement to send people here.
Okay, yeah, or you can. I'm fine with you downloading and reposting it too, but I've had other people do it, and everybody have a great Monday evening, and we'll talk to you later.
Night.